power within. Either you or your business that was just kind of waiting to get out. There's a young lion. And this young lion, he's doing what little cub lions do, he's playing. And as he's playing, his mom is doing what adult lions do, sleeping. So the young cub lion's playing. And he's so caught up in the play that he drifts off and off and off, and it's not long until he's drifted that far, this young cub lion can't see his mum anymore. Mum's still sleeping. Starts to panic. Gets that little bit of fear, that little bit of anxiety. He's looking around, can't find him. The worst thing is, the young lion can't even remember which direction he came from to find his way home. And then he stumbles across a sheep. And the sheep is a mother sheep. She sees the young lion distressed, and she starts to nurse and just try and console this young cub lion who's so stressed out. So she starts to look after him. They try and find the mother lion, can't find her. So she takes this young cub in as one of her own. And as she's nursing this lion, she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know how to treat this lion other than treat it like it's one of her baby lambs. So this young cub lion grows up amongst the baby lambs and becomes one of them. Starts to play just like the lambs. Starts to graze just like the lambs. Eats, drinks, sleeps just like the lambs. The lion, this cub lion, is surrounded in this environment and becomes convinced, I'm just like these guys. If you said to that young lion, you come over here and do this stuff like a lion does, that young cub lion's like, no way, I can't do that, I'm just a sheep. It's become convinced by its environment. That young cub lion starts to grow. It's not long until that young cub lion is bigger than the mother sheep. They're all playing on the edge of the forest one day. And just over the way, there's a hill. And just on top of that hill stands an adult lion. And the other animals, the lambs, the sheep, the cub lion, and the other animals around, they see the lion, they're all scared. All of them are scared. And this lion, this adult lion, lets out this great roar. All the animals, the lamb, the sheep, the other animals, they all run away, terrified. But not the young cub. It's not fear that he felt. It woke something up. It hit his conscious power that wasn't there just 1 minute earlier. And it doubled, tripled, quadrupled the strength that this young cub lion had. And he stood tall, he didn't run away. Finally, that lion had been awoke. It was time to wake up. So instead of running away, he looked back at the big lion on the other hill, and he roared back. Never again would that lion look at himself as a sheep. And here's the thing. Once that conscious power awakens, once there's something that's unlocked within us, same thing is true for you. Once this awakens, you will never, ever, ever go back. And that's our job today, is to awaken that power within that's sitting inside you and sitting inside of your business. And it's sitting inside of everybody's business, every entrepreneur in the country, no matter what business it is that you're in. That's the job for today. And sometimes that's what we need. We need that role, we need that little thing to wake us up. I remember when I first started making a little bit of money, I was mid-20s, I'd never had any money my whole life. We grew up with absolutely nothing, and the first time I made any money, I bought myself a nice watch. And this watch felt super expensive at the time. It was called a JVW watch. It was gold, it had these little diamonds in it. And it wasn't really my style, right? I'm not this kind of flashy guy. But I bought this watch and I felt like it was so expensive at the time, I barely wore it. I wore it 3 times ever. And on the 3rd time that I wore this watch, I put it on, it had been that long since I bought it. I realised it had stopped. I gave it a tap. Nothing happened. I took it off. I gave it a little shake. Nothing happened. And then I struck it hard. And all of a sudden, the watch kicked into life. The hands started ticking. Sometimes that's what we need. We need a good shake to wake something up. Kind of a little bit like, you've gone off to school, right? Go off to school, send your kids off to school. They're 3 or 4, 5 years old. What's the first thing that kid wants to do? They want to make friends. They want to fit in. This is a tribal instinct, by the way. This is our 100,000-year-old brain saying, if I'm not part of the tribe, if I get kicked out of the tribe, I won't survive on my own. So this kid goes into the school, and he's like, right, I've got to fit in. So they see some other kids over there playing. So you go, right, I'm going to go and play with them, and oh, I'm enjoying this just as I'm with these guys. Now that young kid didn't deliberately decide, that game that they're playing, that's my favourite. It saw the other kids playing and thought, I want to be like them. That's the key. So it kind of drifts into this little gang and he starts playing. Then that young kid carries on doing that all the way through junior school, through high school, through college, through university. It's the same thing. See it at the weekend. All the friends are going out getting drunk. That's not really my style because my friends are going, I'm going to go too. So we drift into that pastime as well. Then, this now young adult leaves education and has to find a job. It's hard finding a job, isn't it? No experience, don't really know how to write a CV. It can be hard finding a job. For a couple of months, this now young adult bumps into one of the friends and says, hey, how's it getting on? I'm doing good. How are you doing? Have you found a job yet? No, I've not found a job yet. I've got a job. And I think they're taking on at my place. Don't they put in a good word for you? Yeah, go on, that'd be great, yeah. And now, not only has he drifted through these hobbies, drifted through these pastimes, this young adult has drifted into a job. Because they get a job. Carry on drifting all the way through. Drift out at the weekend, go into the bar, see someone who's attracted to me, and go, oh, okay, and we start a relationship. Now we're drifting into a relationship as well. And that happens all the way to retirement, then we get to retirement. And drift into retirement, there's no how many people go into retirement with a plan of what they're going to do in retirement, right? So we drift into retirement. And this is the whole point, is people do this so regularly in business, especially in the most important function of business, which is marketing. It's the blind leading the blind. How do most people decide what they're going to do with the marketing? They copy everybody else. They copy John from BNI. And John from BNI didn't know what he was doing in his marketing either. So it's the blind leading the blind. And this is what I'm here to do today, is to just shake things up a little bit. And to just shake something and awaken something in you, which if you use the tool I'm going to give you today, I guarantee two things. Number one, your customer acquisition cost, how much it's costing you to buy a customer right now, will drop dramatically. Which means you'll get a ton more leads for the same price. That's the second guarantee. So, let me start with this first. Let me ask you a question. Imagine if I gave you a lamp, and you rubbed this lamp, and a genie popped out. But this wasn't any genie, right? This is a marketing genie. And this marketing genie, instead of giving you 3 wishes, gives you 1 question. What question do you ask the marketing genie? Spend 60 seconds on that now, write it down. The marketing genie pops out, you get to ask it any question, and it'll tell you the answer. Spot on, completely correct. What question do you ask that marketing genie? Away you go, 60 seconds. strategy will net me £1 million, an extra £1 million as well, because we're being greedy. So, great question to ask a marketing genius, right? How many of you would love to know the answer to that question, by the way? What strategy, what tactic is going to work best? Nice. Dan's law.
So, I would have asked, what is the best, cheapest way to acquire my ideal client?
What is the best and cheapest way to acquire my ideal client? Nice. Scott Miller over the back. Can see you hiding. What question would you ask the marketing genie?
What strategy will get me to Emerald by July 27th?
What strategy is going to work best? Again, coming up. Mr. Crystal.
How do I actually make sales from social media?
Nice. How do I actually make sales from social media? Really cool. Okay. Do you want the good news? What I'm going to show you today will answer every single one of those questions. But there is one condition. Can I share it with you? Can I share it with you?
Yes.
The one condition is this. You've got to fucking use it. You've got to implement it. We don't get paid for what we know, right? You get paid for what you do. So you've got to do this. And you've got to do it properly. In fact, what I want you to do is get a fresh piece of paper on your notes. And I want you to write 3 words across the whole page. The 3 words should fill the whole page. And the 3 words are this. Do it. Now already that's a good start, isn't it? The stuff that I'm going to show you today, if you just do that, we're only 2 words in. Just do it. It's going to really help you. And the 3rd word is properly. Do it properly. Don't half-ass it. Don't try and cut corners. Don't try and be the typical entrepreneur with the typical entrepreneur's curse and do it so fast or just skip it or get caught up having tons of new ideas and fighting fires. Now I want you to fill a 2nd page. Same thing, 3 words. You're going to get a different 3 words. 2nd page. And we're going to fill the whole page with these 3 words. You ready? Luke's ready. See it through. See it through. How many entrepreneurs need to get better at that? Seeing things through and doing it properly. Ideas are a cheap commodity. I can go on ChatGPT right now and get more ideas in 3 minutes than this whole room could come up with in 3 days. Ideas are a cheap commodity right now. Information is cheaper than it's ever been. But implementation, doing it properly, seeing it through, that's a scarce commodity. So, guys, are we ready to do it properly and see it through?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Now, how many of you, by the way, I want you to take an honesty bill right now. How many of you didn't just fill the full page, maybe you wrote it a bit bigger than some of the other notes? How many of you didn't write do it properly? Right, already, look at the hands. Guys, you failed to do it properly on the task that said do it properly. Fucking entrepreneurs just cannot do what they're told. But seriously, check in on that, because that's going to be showing up. That's not just showing up here, because how you do anything is how you do. Interesting. So there we go. So let's get down to business. Let's start talking marketing. I want you to meet Rachel. This is Rachel. Say hi, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
So Rachel started on the program 15 months ago. And 15 months ago, Rachel was stressed out because she had done a really good job selling to her circle of influence and then getting no referral, which is basically 80% of businesses in the marketplace. Yes or yes? Maxed out the circle of influence, some of that via social media, and then got a couple of referrals. Here's the problem. That's where most small businesses go, by the way, and then how do they get past it? They don't know, because they don't have the marketing skills and tools to get past. So, Rachel sat down with me. Her cash flow was really tight and she was convinced she needed more leads, which is usually the way as well, isn't it? Most entrepreneurs go, I'm a bit skint, I must need more leads, which isn't always true. So I sat down with Rachel and started asking a couple of questions, and she was basically sat in there, she was like, I don't know what works. Very similar to some of the questions that we were asking the marketing genie earlier. I don't know what works. Now, how many of you have ever been here, by the way, where you're like, I'm not sure which marketing is the best for me, I'm not sure which tactic, which strategy, I'm not sure what to say, what offer. She was in the exact same place, right? It's a really common place to be. So we sat down with her, and I said to her, what's your average sale? And of course she did the typical, well, it's hard to say because some are down here and some are up there. I said, yeah, I used the word average. What's the average sale? And we worked it out, and it turned out it was about 150 quid, of which 50 quid she would spend on the product. So every time she made a sale of 150 quid, she spent 50 quid on the product, her cost of sale was about 50 quid, which meant a GP 100 quid. So the next task was, let's work out how much it's costing you to buy a customer. How much is it costing you to buy a customer? And this was the interesting bit. This was the number. 63 quid. Which meant she had 37 quid to spend on all the overhead. To spend paying herself, paying a team, paying the rent, paying the utilities, and everything else. Not marketing, because that's obviously counted in this 63 quid. So it was costing her a fortune. It was right, okay. So it's not necessarily more leads that she needs, is it? What is it she needs to do? What does she need to do with this number? She needs to drop it. Because when you can drop this right now, she probably can't afford more. She hasn't got the cash flow just to drive in more leads if it's costing you 63 quid. She needs to drop this number and then we can drive more leads. Does that make sense? So, this is how we set about it. It was, Rachel, we've got to make sure that we're driving this number down. And to drive this number down, we use a secret. And this is pretty big. So we applied this trade secret. Now this trade secret is really interesting. Because for some people, by the way, some people know the secret and don't use it. Do you know what we call that? You know what we call that, Steve? Stupid. That's kind of stupid, isn't it? If you know the secret and don't use it, that's kind of stupid. Yes or yes? Yeah. So, some people know the secret and don't use it. And by the way, if you know it and don't use it, you don't know it. You don't know it until you're using it and doing it and doing it. What's the third word you've got to write down? Doing it? Interesting. So, this trade secret, do you know who knows this? This trade secret. All the top guys. Who's this? Who's this guy here? By the way, this guy used the trade secret to blow up. Who's this? Who's this guy? What's his name? Alex Hormozi. Interesting. So, fun fact about Alex Hormozi. Alex Hormozi was brass broke, right? He was this close to going under. And then he learned this trade secret. Do you know who he learned it from? Do you know who Alex Hormozi's mentor was? It was this guy. Who's this guy? Russell Brunson. So Russell Brunson taught this trade secret to Alex Hormozi. And what's really interesting is Alex Hormozi is making millions now, right? Sometimes some of his products making tens of millions. Do you know how much this guy makes? Do you know how much his company did in revenue last year? His marketing company. 230 million. So if Alex Hormozi is like fairly new on the scene, right, in the grand scheme of things. Now, of course, he would tell you it's the overnight success that took 10 years, but he's fairly new. He's like the rookie MVP. He's like the best newcomer. Well, this guy is the seasoned pro. Russell Brunson is the seasoned pro, and he was Alex's mentor. Do you know who mentored this guy? So this guy's making hundreds of millions. Who knows who this guy is? The good granddad. Who's this?
Dan Kennedy.
This is Dan Kennedy, right? So, if Russell Brunson is the seasoned pro, if you're into your football, Alex Hormozi is like the next big thing, the next superstar coming through. Russell Brunson is like your seasoned pro, has been at the top of the league, like your Mo Salahs, your Kevin De Bruyne is like top of the league. This guy is considered one of the two best marketers alive today. One of the two best on the planet. There's two guys you can go, those are the two guys. They're the best marketers on the planet. One of them being Dan Kennedy. Now this guy was Russell Brunson's mentor. What's really interesting is he learned a bunch of stuff of this guy. I don't know who this is. So he's not one of the best marketers alive today, because sadly he passed away a few decades ago. This gentleman's name is David Ogilvy. And he's got one of the biggest advertising agencies in history called Ogilvy Advertising. So they're global, by the way. They're operating in dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of countries. So this is David Ogilvy, and he's considered one of the two greatest marketers that ever lived, that sadly is no longer alive. So we're starting to see these rankings play out, right? You've got Dan Kennedy and this other mystery guy, who are the best alive. You've got David Ogilvy and this other guy, who are the best that are no longer alive. Interesting. So, what do they know that you don't know? What is it that these guys know that you don't know? Who's this? I don't know who this is?
Claude Hopkins.
That's Claude Hopkins, yeah. So he wrote this book. Now, by the way, all these guys know the trade secret. This guy mentioned it in this book. The name of the book gives the game away. The name of the book says this: Scientific Advertising. Now that's quite smart. He's been very candid there with his words. Scientific approach to advertising. By the way, the key word, advertising. That's not giving away loads of stuff for free and never giving them an offer. The definition of advertising is, I'm giving you some value right now and you're going to give me some money back or give me your data back. Does that make sense? So scientific advertising, we wrote this book decades ago, before most of the room was even born. So this is Clark Hopkins. So that's the second guy, by the way, who's the greatest that ever lived that is no longer with us. But we're still missing the secret person, aren't we? I know what you're thinking, James, if all these great guys know this trade secret, how do you know it? How do you know this trade secret if all these guys know it? So, let me answer that question with another question. Who is this guy? Who's this guy? Tony Robbins. Now, pretty much everybody knows who this guy is, right? And this goes back to that old phrase. Who sells the most hamburgers in the world? McDonald's. But they don't serve the best, do they? But they're the best known. And this guy's the same, right? When it comes to personal development and mindset, he might not be the best in the world. He might be, there's an argument to be had. But he's certainly the best known. He's doing events on a scale that nobody in history has even come close to. And it's all because of his marketing. He's certainly got a team around him that are better marketers than all of his competitors. So, I don't know who this guy is. So do you remember before I said Dan Kennedy's the greatest marketer alive? And there's a second guy, this mystery second guy? Well, this is him. He's called Jay Abraham. Now remember I said Alex Hormoz is making millions or tens. Russell Brunson's making hundreds. Do you know what Jay Abraham's nickname is? The $21.7 billion man. That's his nickname. The $21.7 billion man. So, if you want to go and book a session with Jay, by the way, it's going to cost you $100 grand for a day. But this is the reason that I know these trade secrets. If Jay Abraham is going to help Tony Robbins get these events to the most people on the planet, great, that's what I'm going to go and learn from. So I'm really blessed and privileged to have been mentored by Jay one-to-one, in sessions with him throughout the year last year, and learn this key trade secret. And through that time that I spent with Jay, I wanted to share with you the biggest lessons that I got from him, whilst I was on my mission to go and make sure that I could do the same things and fill these events and impact and serve as many people as possible. So is it okay if I share those lessons with you? That's up from Jay. The greatest marketer alive, the $21.7 billion man. Is that okay? Yeah. Guys, is that okay? Yeah. Beautiful. So, my target, fill these events. Now, same thing, I had to start in the same place. How much is it costing me to get someone to an event? This is how much it was costing me. It was pretty expensive to start out with. 169 quid. Pretty expensive. Carry on going like that, whew, cash flow's going to get tight, right? So the first thing is, let's drop this number. And then we can scale. And it's the same thing for you. If your cost per customer acquisition is high, you've got to drop it first. And even if it's low, you can still probably drop it and then scale on. Make sense? So, the first thing that Jay said to me was, James, very similar to some of the Genie questions, James, what's working best? And guess what the answer was? Don't know. But this is the first piece of advice he gave me. He said, you've got to figure out what works. Now, a typical entrepreneur, I'm doing everything at 100 miles an hour, right? And he said these two words to me. He said, James, slow down. And do you know what was running through my head? Do it properly. Do it properly, James. So, first things first, James, you've got to figure out what works. What are the tactics that work best? So, second thing that we started to look at was this. Figure out the biggest needle movers. Now, I am massive on this terminology, needle movers. What are the needle movers? There are tons of needle movers, right? If you're trying to get people to an event, there are tons of different things that you can do, but some things are more effective than others. So doesn't it make sense to start with the biggest needle movers? Rather than getting caught up in all the different possibilities, all the different shiny objects, what are the biggest needle movers? Let's start there. So you've got to figure out what are the biggest needle movers. So if we're starting with marketing as a whole department, it's the deepest and broadest function in business. We've got to start dividing it and breaking it up so we can divide to multiply. So we've got to start breaking it up into smaller segments. So let's take marketing, then let's go, right, what are the best tactics? That's the first micro of this ultimate macro that we want to break down and get clear on. So, what are the tactics that are going to work best? That's our first job. So, to figure that out, this was Jay's top tip. He said, at the end of the first session, he said, I want you to go away and I want you to record your daily activity. So just document what activity you do each day, and each day document how many tickets you sell. And pretty quickly you'll start to see a bit of a pattern. On the days that you sell loads of tickets, look what activity you did. That will start to show you what works. So this was like the first task. So you might want to write this down and record the daily activity. And this is dead simple and clean, by the way. So start to record the daily activity. And this is what it looked like. Now, some days you're going to do more than one piece of activity on the same day. That's okay, you put it on the same line. But to make it really clear and simple for you guys, I wanted to break it down. So, right at the top there, you can see Facebook ads. Ran Facebook ads campaign, result 16 tickets sold. Next day, email campaign, 8 tickets sold. Next day, calls, 0 tickets sold. So you literally just document the activity, document the result. Really simple. So, that's the name of the game. Now, the daily activity is going to give you a clue as to what works. So you're going to start to see, like we just saw there, calls 0. Okay, calls might not work for this. Now that's not to say calls don't work full stop, that's to say, for this event, in my business, the calls didn't work. That's not to say the calls don't work for everybody. Don't fall into that trap. It's going to be different for everybody in the room. So, but what we did see was some stuff that started to work. So that's your first job, what works. Now, what do we not know? We might know what works, but we don't know why it works, right? Which is what we'll get to in a second. So let's just go back, and we can start to see, right at the top there, you've got Facebook ads are working. 16 tickets sold, interesting. Then look again, the next highest is 21. Oh, it's gone up. Great, also from Facebook ads, this is interesting. Next time, we've got 33, that's the highest yet. Also from Facebook ads. Interesting. And there's some stuff that was getting a really poor result. We've got email, that's kind of like, that's a decent result, it's not bad, not quite as good as Facebook ads, but we've got 12 there from email. And then it's like, right, okay, there's some stuff that's just flatlining. That we're getting 0, calls, text messages, it's just flatlining. Okay. So we're starting to see what's working, what's not working. Does this make sense? That's your first job. Really simple, really clean. But if you don't know what works, you're going to get caught in this vicious loop and you're going to drift. Just like the kid who's drifted into the games, into the hobbies, into the relationship and into retirement. We don't want to drift. The opposite of drifting is being deliberate. And this starts to give you some deliberation. So, let's get clear on what works first. Then, second step is what are the biggest needle movers. So we put together a list. This is working, this isn't working. And define working in your own terminology, but meta ads were working, emails were working, we were getting some positive results. Now, email was actually the cheapest, but it wasn't getting the most results. So you've got to get clear then, am I after cheap or am I after scalability? For events, we need scalability, right? But there's going to be some times where you don't need scalability, you need cheap. Cheap is better than scalability. If you don't need large volume, you might prefer cheap. Then you determine which one's the biggest needle mover. We've got personal invites, worked really well, also pretty cheap. Couple of letters, couple of envelopes, pretty cheap, but they were working really well. And referrals, again, working really well. The problem is, hard to scale. So, in terms of scalability, we were getting a clear winner. And there was some stuff that weren't working. Radio, didn't work. Spent thousands on it, didn't work. Didn't sell a single ticket. PR in this instance, didn't work. And we've already seen the calls didn't work. So, we were starting to get a little bit clearer on the things that were working, the things that weren't. Like I said earlier, that's your first job. What works, what doesn't, and then, what is the biggest needle mover? So, that was our next step. How can we maximize that big needle mover? So then we want to break it down even further. Remember, this was my starting point. The cost per registration was 169 quid. So how do we reduce that? By focusing on these big needle movers. Once you've figured out what works, then it's time to figure out what works within it and why, and then divide to multiply further. So we started with this big macro of marketing and we went, right, what are the tactics that work? Okay, these are the tactics that work, we take one of those and divide to multiply that. Make sense? So, let's get down to the nitty gritty then. if Meta ads, Facebook and Instagram ads, were our biggest needle mover, how did we get them to work? Okay, this led me to Jay's top tip number 4. I'll write these tips down as well, by the way. Optimize the needle movers. Dead simple. You've got to optimize the biggest needle movers. Jay Abraham is wildly known for 2 main things. 1 is trade secret, and 2, optimization. But there's no point optimizing. So if I said earlier referrals were okay, but it's hard to scale, is that where I'd start, by optimizing referrals? Of course not. I'm going to start with the biggest needle mover. That's really important that we start to understand that. So, now it's time to break down the tactics. Let's go back to Meta ads, because that's where we were. That was the biggest needle mover. So now we divide to multiply and we go, what's the biggest needle movers within Meta ads? There are a ton of needle movers within Meta ads. Any of you that have used that before, Facebook or Instagram ads, there's tons of things that you can tweak and change to try and improve. First one, you could tweak and change the call to action button. There's like 20 different versions of call to actions button. It could say sign up, it could say learn more, it could say book now. All those will make a difference to the result. You could tweak and change even the URL. That's how micro you can get on Meta. You can tweak and change the URL and put a completely different URL into the actual one that you're driving. So if you're driving against your website, you can create a URL, a display URL, put whatever you want there, and it'll still drive them to your website. That can also make a difference. But they're not the biggest needle movers. Got to get clear on the biggest needle movers. That's where we want to start. So what are the biggest needle movers when it comes to Meta ads? Well, there's 3. There are 3 really big ones. The first one is the media. By that I mean the image or the video. So that's one really big needle mover. That makes such a bigger difference than the call to action button. The second one is the copy. The words that you use matter. And then the third one is the audience. The audience that you send it to. So they're your 3 big needle movers within Meta ads. Now you need to do the same, no matter which tactic you're using, you've got to do the same. Break it down. What are the biggest needle movers? Okay? So this is exactly what we did. These were the 3 big needle movers, media, copy and audience. Break them down. So, this is what we did. We started with the media, right? My presumption, and you know what to say about presumption being the mother of all fuck-ups, but my presumption was the image in the video, that's going to be the biggest needle mover. So we started there. So we started with image, and I tested a bunch of different images. These are all the images that we use. So this first one is kind of like, this is where you could be. You could come and drive this posh car if you come to this event. We had images of the speakers, celebrity speakers like Sir Randall Fiennes. We had an image of the Polestar with all the speakers on it. Then we had a testimonial image. Then we had an image of the audience jumping up and going crazy. We had an image of me, and we had an image of this. She's going to fight your therapist after this event. Now, guess which one won? Shout it out. Which one do you reckon won? If you had to guess, which one do you think won? The shouting people. What else?
Picture of you.
Other bit of... Oh, I wish it was a picture. That was last. What else?
Therapist.
Therapist. Nice. You know which one won? Now, here's the funny thing. When you're experimenting like this, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to get it wrong. You're going to get it wrong. You know which one the winner was? This one. Couldn't believe it. It was the crappiest one. It took the least amount of effort. It's the ugliest one. I was like, I cannot believe that was one. And it won by a considerable margin. So, remember what I said? Take the thing and divide to multiply it further. So, now that we've got a winner, because we were all in different styles, right? Some of them are the speaker, some of them are some posh things that you can have as you win, some of them are testimonials. Testimonial 1. So now we test variations of testimonial. Make sense? So we're just taking it down a notch longer. So we put out all these different testimonials that we've had so far, and we started to test these, see which one wins. And we had another clear winner, and it was this one. And he said, James, you had a positive, if not scary, changing my mother tonight, driving home. She was sitting in the back seat, muttering all the changes her employees are going to be seeing. God help her. This one won. So it was like, great. Now, every time we find a winner, what happens to that cost per customer? What's happening to that every time we find a new winner? It's coming down. Bear in mind, sometimes you experiment and it doesn't come down, it goes up. So you just go back to the original and then try and beat it again. Does that make sense? You're in constant competition with the best performing app. And like I said, this works on every tactic. But you've got to do 2 things. You've got to do it properly, you've got to see it through. So, we found this winner. And we carry on doing this with every single event. So at every new event, we start a new testing campaign, and away we go. All to get clear on Jay's first tip, which is figure out what works. When you know what works. Until then, he said, James, slow right down. Slow right down. You try to go and put 20,000 people in an event before you know what works. That doesn't even make sense. Slow right down. Like, right, okay. So, next campaign comes around. Started testing video. The problem was with this first event, we didn't have a ton of video. Or the video wasn't relevant to the size and scale of that first event. Then we started to get some more video. So, started testing the video. We had this one where we got the audience to go crazy. Then the next video, we had a testimonial. It was a testimonial glow store. And then another one which is face the camera and me going, these guys are going to witness something at this event that they've never seen before. So we ran a whole bunch of different videos, and this one was, are we ready? Yeah! We're ready. There was a hesitation there. There was a hesitation there, but we're ready. On 3. 1, 2, 3, here we go! So there we go. We're starting to get clearer and clearer and clearer. Video was our performing image, and this was the top performing video. So what do we do? If we've tried different styles here, and this one, what do we do now? We try different versions of getting the audience to do crazy stuff. Make sense? So whichever one wins, you try variations of that style. So that's exactly what we did. We ran a bunch of campaigns, and we had all these different ads running at once, all of them getting the audience to jump about and go crazy. And then a completely different one won. A completely different one won, but each time we had a winner, that cost per registration was coming down. So, this was a winner. And what was really beautiful is we started to get some insights into why we thought they were winning. Okay. So what was starting to happen is, every single experiment we did, I'd write the result and summarise the result next to where I documented the experiment. And I would write why I thought that ad won. Now, why did I think this ad won? And this is when I had this brainstorm. While I was writing and documenting this summary, I thought, I reckon that's won. Because it's really making it clear what the event is. Even the testimonial didn't make it clear what the event is. The picture of a Ferrari doesn't make it clear what the event is, does it? But this, I can start to see what the event is. So that led me to the next experiment, which was, how do I make it even clearer than that what the event is? Now at this point, this video, by the way, that cost per registration had gone from 169 quid, and it dropped all the way down. Now bear in mind, I'm saying this has been a few minutes. This took me almost a year. This took me 11 months to get it from 169 quid all the way down to £6.42. All from testing, all from simple tests. You've just seen, right, none of that content is particularly flashy. None of it is particularly advanced. But it just started to whittle its way down, and I'm getting the learnings along the way. So, remember, I've just gone, it's clear what it is. How do I make it even clearer? And this is what I came up with. This is when it is, December 1st. It's in London. You're going to find out what's been holding you back and how far you can go. Book your ticket now. You know what happens to the cost per registration? Dropped again. £1.43. How cool is that? Guys, £1.43. So, that was the name of the game, right? It's like, how do we keep dropping that down? And that's where the secret lies. I didn't actually think you guys were going to applause, so I put my own applause in, so. Thank you for being a great audience. So, I know you're probably thinking that sounds like a lot of work. Do you know what the best part about this is? If you do it properly and see it through, do you know how long it takes the team to document the change, the experiment, and the result per day? Have a guess.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Any takers on 5 minutes? It's about 45 seconds. That's how long it takes. Once you've documented that original experiment, every day then you go in, you document the activity and the result from the day, 45 seconds, you look here and go, that many registrations, and you type the number in there. That's it. How easy is that? I guarantee you're working way harder to get it wrong. Doesn't even make sense. So, sounds like a lot of work, I promise you it's not, but there's still more lessons to come. So, imagine if you were doing this with direct mail. So imagine now, whatever tactic you're using, imagine you were using direct mail, and you're like, right, James, where do I start? Remember, where do we start? The biggest needle mover. So we've got to go, okay, what might be the biggest needle mover with direct mail if we're sending letters out? There's a bunch of different stuff, right? And you can take your pick on this, which one you start with. But we could test what day you send the letters. That could make a difference, yes or yes? You could also test what colour the envelope is. I would guess yellow, green, red, blue would work better than brown or white, but I might be wrong. You don't know until you've done the experiment. You could change the headline on the letter and the copy itself. You could change the offer. You could change all these different things. So, we did this with Rachel. Let me take you back to Rachel. You're probably going to want to document this because this is pretty important. This is how we test and measure. So, take this word for word. The first sheet is daily activity. That shows you what works. This is the tactic breakdown. They're the only two components. Daily activity, what works. Tactic breakdown, why it works. And this is how you reduce the cost per tactic. And you probably, if you're running multiple tactics, which you should be, then you're probably going to want to do this for each tactic. So whether it be direct mail, whether it be calls, whether it be £1 million referral. Again, think about it, right, I'm running £1 million referral campaign. What are the main needle movers? What are the different things that I can break down? Right, how I invite someone to send me a referral and offer them £1 million? What I say, so on and so forth. Does this make sense? So, there's only a couple of things that you need on the spreadsheet. Depending on the tactic you're using, there might be a couple more things that you measure, but the rest of this is going to stay pretty stationary. So, first things first, this is literally what we did with Rachel. So remember, at this point, she's making 37 quid after everything's been paid for per sale, and that's going to cover all the overhead. Wasn't doing the job for her. So this is literally what we did with her. Your first column is date. Okay? What's the date that you run the campaign? And again, your daily activity shows you what you do every day. You might only set up a new campaign. If you're doing paid advertising, whether that be PPC, whether that be Meta ads, whether that be TikTok, whatever, that's probably not going to be every day. You're going to do one campaign, let it run for a while, start a new campaign. So what are we testing in this image? In this instance, the tactic is Meta ads. And what we tested first was the media because that's the biggest needle mover. So we tested a variation of style. We started with different styles. First style was an image of the product. So we thought, right, the product that's actually sells, let's start with an image of that. Second was an image of a customer looking delighted. And then the third one was a video of a growth story. So then it was like, right, document the result for each one. For each thing that you brought down, document the result. The first one got her 11. Okay, so she got 11 leads. Now, by the way, when you're measuring the result, if you're a construction company, and by the time you get the lead to convert in the sale is 6 months, you don't record the sale. Because otherwise, you've got to go back and go, what did I do 6 months ago? You'd record the lead. So you're recording the first measurable result, the first main significant result, not necessarily, if you've got a long lead cycle, the result right over here. So this is leads. She got 11 leads from the image of the product. From the image of the customer, she got 14, and from the image of the growth story, she got 32. So what do you do at this point? You break down the style, the growth story, and you would run multiple growth stories. Does that make sense? So first, get clear on the style, and then try variations of the style until you've got a winner. And you can keep doing that, dividing to multiply, until you see barely any result change in each acquisition cost per customer, or until the results actually get worse. Because remember, some experiments, they won't win every time. They won't win every time. So, then it was like, right, now we've found the cheapest image or video we can, that's getting the best result. Now, let's test the next big needle mover. Let's test the copy. So, in Ad 1, we used Dan Kennedy's problem agitation solution copywriting framework. In Ad 2, we used a good old tested AIDA or AIDA, however you want to pronounce it. And then we tested a story-selling copywriting framework in Ad 3. Measure the result. So this is the first one, 34, it's gone up, great. Next one, didn't quite go, it went down, 31, okay, bin that one. Then the next one, the storytelling framework, that went up again, 43. So guess what you do now? You test variations of storytelling framework, make sense? So you're just getting clear on the style and then you're testing variations of the winner. So, we've got the medium, we've got the copy. Last thing to do, audience. The audience is a big one. So, tested a bunch of audiences. Ad 1 went to a broad audience. Ad 2 went to business owners only. Now, by the way, she's not B2B. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. Ad 3 went to people that bought a product like ours recently. So people that bought something similar to what she was selling. So, we ran the ads. We measured the result, 43 on the broad audience, the business owners got 44, but the bought a product like ours recently jumped up to 55. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a winner! Let's try that again, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a winner! Hey! All clarity. Look! Now, by the way, that might take a year, but what's happened to that result? That first test got 11 leads. She spent the same amount and got 55 at the back end of the year. Is that worth spending a year on? Yes or yes? Yeah. But you've got to do two things. You've got to do it, and you've got to see it. Interesting. It takes some persistence, it takes some dedication, it takes some you being a high-performing entrepreneur and not just running around like a blue-ass fly. So, it dropped and dropped and dropped, and this is what's really cool. Rachel's cost per sale, it was previously 63 quid. Now, right now as we speak, it's down at £6.4p. How cool is that? So it didn't just work for me, right? We started testing this and it was working for every single person that was doing it. It's almost inevitable. It's almost impossible to fail. It's a bit like an index fund. For those of you aware of what an index fund is, if you're investing into the S&P 500 and you're investing regularly every single month, it's almost impossible to fail unless you pull out and quit too early. It's the exact same with this. The only way you can fail with this level of experimentation, test and measure is if you stop doing it too early, or you stop on the loser. If you have one bad campaign, one bad ad, you've got to keep going. Now the other big thing on this, people hear this phrase all the time, test and measure, but most people don't test and measure. They just measure. Now don't get me wrong, there's a lot of businesses out there, small businesses, that are not even measuring. How many of you have seen those, by the way? The businesses don't even measure. They don't even know what Excel is. Never mind anything more complex. So, first is, yes, measure, that's useful. But remember, measure only shows you one thing. What does it show you? What works. It doesn't show you why it works. So this isn't just in marketing, by the way. This is the same with staff. Imagine if you had a staff member and you were measuring their results, their KPIs, and their result was low. And then a year from now, you notice that their numbers gone up. Do you know why it went up? No, you just know it went up. So without the test, it's just measure. And when you look back, right, we're entrepreneurs, we've got short memories. So when you look back and you can see numbers going up and down, and it's been more than 2 weeks, you don't know why it went up or down. You can just see it going up or down. But there's nothing that you can do to recollect that information and go, that's why it went up or down. So there's a key ingredient that you need to make sure you know why it goes up or down. And that's where the test and measure comes in. Most people don't test and measure, they just measure, if they measure at all. Does that make sense? So, Rachel's cost per sale came down. Came right down. At that point then, not only did she have more room for overhead, it meant that she had the cash flow to inject more money into marketing, meaning that she can get more customers at £6 rather than being skinned at £63. And here's what happened next. The business absolutely exploded. She doubled what she was paying herself pretty quickly, and she went on to win an international award in her industry. Really cool, right? She's a superstar. Do you know what she's good at? 2 things. She does it properly. She sees things through. That's the key. No entrepreneur's curse here. So, this brings me on to Jay's top tip number 5. Your opinion doesn't matter. You can go read Dan Kennedy's books. He's wrote about 75,000 of them. You can go read Jay Abraham's books. You can go read David Ogilvy and Clark Hopkins' books. You can go read Gary Benjaminga, Gary Halbert, go read Gary Vaynerchuk's books. Your opinion still doesn't matter, neither does theirs. What matters? The results. If Dan Kennedy comes to you and says, I and you don't, and you write this, or you test ball, and yours wins, does his opinion matter? No, your opinion doesn't matter. The result matters. So when you do get those ideas, okay, by the way, how many of you are the idea? You're either the ideas guy or girl, right? Or you're the integrator. Where are the ideas, the visionaries, the creative people? Where are you guys? Don't worry, there's still a place for you, right, in the business. So here's what you do with all your ideas. You put them on the test list. Write a list. These are all the things that we could test. So next time you have an idea, you say, I think we should say this in the copy. Great, add it to the test list. You don't need to have an argument anymore. You don't need to go, well, I think we should send emails daily or weekly or monthly. Great, add it to the test list. Now, when it comes to, right, what should we test this campaign? Well, there's the test list. What do we think the biggest needle mover is going to be? Does that make sense? But understand that your opinion doesn't matter. Just test it and see. And what happens then is it takes the emotion out of it. What happens when you give your opinion, you go, I think it's definitely this, and then it's wrong? Oh my God. Kills you, doesn't it? Not when you're just testing. Not if you just go, I think this, let's add it to the test list. It takes away all that sensitivity. And yes, as business owners, we shouldn't be ruled by emotions, but unfortunately we are. People shouldn't judge you on how they look. But they do. Should is a crap word, isn't it? It doesn't change anything. So just test it. We shouldn't judge on emotions, we do. But if you just add things to the test list, great. It's going to take all that emotion away. James top tip number 6. Mark it for the love of learning instead of getting stressed with the result, and then the results will come. How many of you have done this? You've got a big event coming up, or you've got a product that you need to sell, or a service you need to sell, and everything's on the line. And you put it all in, and you don't get the result that you want. It's happened again, hasn't it? This marketing, this business, all this stuff can be a hard gig. But that, when you obsess over the result, that's when that happens. That's when that emotional baggage hits. Whereas when you're more obsessed with, okay, what can we get from the learning of this test? The image or video work better? And you go, okay, video work better, great. We run these different 5 styles of video, which one works better? Oh, that one works better, great. You're not so stressed and caught up and anxious about the result, you fall in love with the learning, and then funnily enough, what happens? Because you're obsessed with learning, what keeps happening to that cost per customer acquisition? It keeps dropping. It's the law of procession. So instead of just stressing and getting so anxious about the result, fall in love with the learning. Straight from the horse's mouth, one of the biggest tips Jay shared with me. And here was number 7. And this is literally how we ended our last session together. He started, if you remember session 1, he said, James, when you don't know what works, slow down. And this is what he finished with on our last session together. When you don't know what works, slow right down. Because when you do know what works, you can move so fast. Could Rachel chuck all of her freaking money into a marketing now that she knows she's getting her 6 quid? Yeah, and she'll go way faster. Now I wouldn't advise you know your money in. Don't be so reckless. But so many people do that at the beginning when they don't know what works. I did that at the beginning when I didn't know what works. How foolish. And it puts you under so much stress and strain. When you don't know what works, slow down. And when you do know what works, then you can go fast. Really cool. James top tip number 8. This was the key. Do you remember when I said some people measure? Very few test and measure, which is one key ingredient. You have to document the change. So if you remember back when I showed you the sheet that you should use earlier, it said, describe the test. Describe the experiment. If you don't, and you've just got numbers, if it just says, result, in this instance, tickets sold, 16, 8, 23, 33, and I don't document the change on what I was testing, and I don't document the experiment, I don't fucking know why that number's gone up or down. I'm just looking at a number go up and down. But go back to that staff member, their KPIs are low, and then they go up. If at that point I'd have documented and said, when his KPIs are low, I had a nice chat with him and give him a carrot. I gave him a nice word. Oh, then his result went further down. Okay, and then I document the experiment. So I said, okay, the second time I ain't going to give him the carrot, I'm going to give him the stick and a kick. Oh, his result went up. Have you learned something from that experiment? Yes or yes? Yeah. But you have to document the change. If you don't describe the test, you don't know why it went up or down, you just know it went up or down. Which is better than knowing nothing, but it's not better than knowing why it happened. Does this make sense? This is one of the biggest components. This is why I said this is a trade secret, because everybody's heard of test and measure before, but most people don't test, they just. That's the problem. It's the test where all the magic happens. The measure is just getting the result and scooping up the result. So if we look at marketing as a whole, if we break down this big, deep function that we call marketing, there's loads of needle movers, different targets, and contacting different audiences, the offer that you use, inviting people in to take a thing, the copy, oh my God, that's one of the most underrated principles in marketing. The words you use matter. The tactic, do I do meta ads, do I do email, do I do calls, do I do direct mail, do I do referral, do I go and submit to £1 million referral? The tactic is a needle mover. An adventure model, that means starting in cheap or free, and then working the way up the ladder. Or timing, whether that be the day that I send the letters, whether that be the month that I host the event, whether that be the time of day I send the email, those little things can make a big difference as well. But do you know what the biggest needle mover in that? They're all different needle movers. What's the biggest needle movers in marketing? There's two that stand tall above all the others. You know what they are? The first one is activity. The second one is test and measure. That's the trade secret. I promise you, and I know because I've been around them and seen it. What's the difference between Alex Hormozy, Russell Wilson, Dan Kennedy, Clive Hopkins, David Ogilvy, Jay Abraham, and everybody else that's trying to market at the same level? They test properly. They run experiments. They know what works. They're not guessing. They're not guessing. It's not just skill alone. They know what works. That's the key, and that's relevant to every tactic, whether it be meta ads or something else. Make sense? So, quick question for you. If they're the biggest needle movers in marketing, activity, then test and measure. Write this down. I'm giving you 15 seconds, by the way, not that long. First question is this. How much time each week are you dedicated to consistent activity? That's the second biggest needle mover, activity. How much time each week are you spending on consistent activity? Write that number down. By the way, that might not be you, that might be in your whole marketing business. Ideally, that's not you as the entrepreneur. Ideally, that's somebody else within the business. Because when it is somebody else within the business, you'll get more done anyway. How much time each week is being spent on consistent activity, not fluctuations, not a market really busy, not, I do loads of marketing when I'm quiet, and then I stop when I'm busy. You know what we call that, man? That's stupid. That's also stupid. Marketing when it's quiet and then stopping when it's busy, so that you get quiet again. Really stupid, don't do that. So how much time you spend on consistent activity? Second question is this. How much time each week is somebody in your business, this isn't just you, somebody in your business, are they spending measuring? How much time each week are you spending measuring in your business? Again, not you. This is better if it's not you. How many of you are typical entrepreneurs, right? Magpie syndrome, you're doing 1,000 things at once. Where are the typical entrepreneurs? Get those hands right up. And the rest of you are liars. Right, you guys are the worst people in the business to be doing the test and measure. The worst. So, last question. If that's how much time you spend in measuring, how much time are you spending testing? That's the big needle mover. Genuinely testing, documenting the test, and then experimenting with different styles and then drilling down. How much time are you spending testing? Now think about that. Look down at your answers. How can you drive those numbers up? Because they are the two biggest needle movers in business, in marketing. So, if all you do, if the only thing that you do is leave you and do more of that, you'll win. Let me give you a step-by-step guide. When all of these are down, take a picture then. So I'm going to give you step by step, make sure you make notes. This is a step-by-step guide, how to test and measure like the best marketers alive. Okay, so first things first. First thing we want to do is create a simple test and measure sheet. That's like one of the first things for you to do. Once that's set up, the chance of you actually following through goes through the roof. Because the law of diminishing returns says this, the longer you read it, the less likely it'll happen. So strike while the iron's hot. Okay? First job, create a test and measure sheet. There's two things to document, daily activity, and then a tactic breakdown for each tactic that you're using. Second thing that you do is measure. That is literally just documenting the result. Now, some of you might be here already. Okay? Some of you might be measuring, but unfortunately, most entrepreneurs aren't. Most entrepreneurs stop short there. Next step, make somebody in the business that's diligent. Where are the entrepreneurs again? Put your hands right up, entrepreneurs. Where are the extroverts? You add yourselves to the list. Where are the extroverts? Put your hands right up, extroverts. Right, you guys, this isn't you. This is not you. Someone that's diligent, someone that's analytical, someone that's consistent, someone that's responsible for doing this every single day in the business. Okay, go and hire someone super cheap. Go and hire some admin staff, part-time, an hour a day, whatever. But just get somebody who's accountable for the daily upkeep of those sheets. Every single day they document what activity's been done today, write the number down. It's about 45 seconds work. And they might even be responsible for ringing up Tim. Tim, what was the activity you did today? Because we know Tim ain't documenting that sheet. Jim, you probably won't document the sheet. Jim, what activity did you do? Juliet, what activity did you do today? And then document it. Make sure someone's responsible for that. Remember, if nobody is accountable, the result ain't happening. And if there's two people responsible, what's the saying in the military? When two people are in charge, everybody dies. When two people are in charge, everybody dies. Okay? One person, you're responsible for that. That's really important, one of the most important steps. Next step. Strategically test and experiment and change one thing at a time. Now this is really important. This is a really important, this is why when we go back to what was Paul Hopkins' book called? Scientific advertising. Do you know why scientific? By the way, Dan Kennedy says this. He says it's much easier to take a mathematician and make him a marketer than it is to take a creative and make him a mathematician. And marketing's maths. But Paul Hopkins says scientific advertising. Why? Whenever a scientist is testing a new theory, they've got to make sure that every variable is the same, except from the one component of the testing. So then when the result goes up or down, we can definitely say it was that one thing that caused it. Does that make sense? So for example, if you're testing on an email campaign, everything needs to be the same other than the one thing that you're testing. So for example, if you're testing what time of day is the best time to send the email, great. The copy, the author, the audience, everything needs to be the same. But you would send the email 3, 4, 5 different times in one day to even lists. You want to get the list as even as you can. Every variable needs to be as even as it can. Change the one thing, that's the reason that the result went up or down. Make sense? So you've got to take that scientific approach to it. Every variable the same. With Meta Ads, really easily done. With Google PPC, really easily done. Because you can just duplicate the ad a bunch of times, then change the one thing. Got it? Next thing, make sure you've got enough data to make it statistically relevant. One is the worst number in marketing, for many reasons. So make sure you've got enough data. Get this all the time with clients, and I've done a client whose target market is estate agents. And she goes, well no, estate agents think like this. And I go, go on. Well, I spoke with this estate agent and they told me, how many estate agents? One. That one person's opinion isn't a reflection of the whole market, it's a reflection of that one person. One's the worst number you need whenever you're testing. So for example, if you're testing on social media or online, this is dead easy because you'll hit thousands of people, which is enough people to make it statistically relevant, in 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days in, you'll know what the winner is. But if you're doing cold calling and you're going knocking on business doors, it's going to take you probably a month testing one thing to hit enough people to go, right, that's enough data. Does that make sense? So hundreds, you need hundreds, if not thousands of data points to go, right, that data is accurate and make a decision. So, next step, summarise the learnings. Whenever you've done a test and you're moving on to the next test, document and summarise your learnings. Just like I said, that first video where the crowd's going wild with the skull bites, the learning there was, maybe, well, number one, we know that videos where we're getting the crowd going crazy win. That's objective. Then I added my subjective opinion to it, and remember my opinion doesn't matter. In this instance it works, most of the time it doesn't. In this instance I went, I think it's because it's clear what the event is, let's make it even clearer. But I have to document and summarise those learnings. Does that make sense? You have to, that's really important. And then step 7, from the summary, then you can decide what you test next. And you always want to go for the biggest needle movers. So really, really important. Now, if all you do... Take your pictures now.
Number 7.
It's coming, it's coming. 2, 1, at a time. If all you do is leave here and test, do tons of activity, and then test some more, I promise you will win. I promise you will win. Like I said, just like the index fund, it's hard to lose long term. Unless you don't do it properly, you don't see it through, and you quit too early. Does that make sense? Very cool. Right, everybody on your feet? Now, go back to the beginning when I started. I said, sometimes you just need that shake. Sometimes the bloody watch has stopped. Didn't work when I tapped it. Didn't work when I gave it a gentle shake. But when I give it a good violent fucking shake on it, oh, it works then. So sometimes we've got to give something a violent shake to wake it up. Hopefully, you've had a little bit of a shake and gone, shit, the bed. I mean, anybody ever do a shit in the bed? Shit in the bed. I need to test and measure. So, are you ready for a big finish? Yeah. When I say wake it up, you say wakey wakey. Okay? Are you ready? Ian Stratton, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Wake it up! Wake it up! No, wake it up! Wake it up! As loud as you can, wake it up! Wake it! When I say I am, you say awake. I am! I am! Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, if all you do is leave here and test and measure, it's going to wake something up within inside you. It's going to wake something up within inside you personally, within inside your business. And it'll unleash a power that has been there all along, just needed waking up. Ladies and gents, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Just give us a yes if you enjoyed that from James Burke. I think we deserve to finish it in style. So let's just get some shared learnings of what you had at your end, or what you just wrote down, and say it as proud as you can. Back of the room, we've got Jenny. Stand up and shout it out. Jenny?
James, that was hands down the best ever session we've had in conference for me. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is we test, we measure stuff, we don't test it, we don't track it robustly, and we lose the learnings, and we need to keep them.
Any comment, Jay?
Yeah, can you imagine?